Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another office hour. My name
Hello.
is Emma, and we have our director with us today.
Hi, everybody. I'm Enrique Hausa. I'm the Director of TMDSAS and Community Engagement for the Texas Health Education Service. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, as some of y'all may know, if y'all are joining us for the first time ever, welcome. We do use the office hours to be able to address some of y'all's questions, frequently asked questions, or anything you have in mind that you might need help with filling out your application, or might be curious about what the next steps are for you if you've already submitted your application. You know, the cycle doesn't end whenever you submit. There are still many steps to come your way in the application cycle. So, for those who have been watching our deadlines page or those who are our veterinary applicants, we do have the TMDSAS EY 2025 application deadline coming up. That will be on Friday, August 30th at 11:59 p.m. So I know that a lot of times, in the past, we've had applicants who will apply the week of. That's okay. As long as your application gets submitted by that time, your application will be considered for vet school. However, it's never a bad idea to go ahead and get started and get ahead of the team or ahead of the game, just because you don't want to run into the stress, the anxiety of doing things last minute, any technical issues that may occur. If you need help or anything like that, you'd want to reach out to us. You know, we only operate during business hours, Monday through Friday. So we want to provide as many opportunities as we can so that you can ask your questions earlier rather than later.
Yeah, if I could interject, Sulema, that August 30th deadline for veterinary applicants is not just for the TMDSAS application. That August 30th deadline is for your TMDSAS application, for your secondary application to Texas A&M and or Texas Tech School of Veterinary Medicine. And it's also the deadline for your evaluators to have those evaluations submitted. So, if you're currently working on your application, make sure that you complete that letters of evaluation section. Enter the contact information for your evaluators so that right now they have 2 solid weeks to get that evaluation in. And I can tell you that a lot of evaluators tend to have a few questions around how to submit an evaluation. So it's best to get that in ASAP. Just complete that section. That sends out an email that alerts your evaluators that they have to complete an evaluation. And on your end, you do not need to wait for TMDSAS to process or transmit your application to the schools in order to access those secondary applications for the vet schools. And so we really urge you to use these last 2 weeks of August as best as possible to make sure that you are submitting not just a quality application, but also an application that is in on time. Once that August 30th day rolls around and the deadline passes, there's no other opportunity for veterinary applicants to submit an application. And this is your one shot to get in for the entry year 2025 cohort. So do pay attention to those deadlines because they are very important. And this is a little bit earlier than previous cycles, but we have been communicating since well before the application opened about this deadline. So if you're just learning about it now, I'm glad you're hearing it. But it's time. It's really time to get everything in order and get everything submitted.
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that, Enrique. Because unlike with our dental, medical, and podiatry applicants who have first the application deadline, they have their letters deadline later on, and then secondaries are all based on school. With the vet schools, it is different because they do want everything like all at once, pretty close together. So you want to make sure that you not only get your application done, the primary application with TMDSES, but you also take a look at those other resources. We went ahead and pasted the frequently asked questions from evaluators page. And so if you recently communicated with your evaluator, hey, I would like for you to write an evaluation for me for vet school. Here are some frequently asked questions. Make sure to inform them about what to expect. Like Enrique mentioned, the process of how they will get that email request to fill out the form. Because a lot of times we have evaluators call us and they have no idea what's happening. They call and they're like, I just received a request for a student that worked for me a couple years back and has been in the clinic, and I don't really know what I'm supposed to be writing. So just make sure that you let them know what's going on. We've had sessions with the deans before in the cycle, talking about the importance of building that rapport with your evaluators so that they are a great supporter of yours and will be ready to fill out your evaluation form when the time comes. So make sure to fill them in onto essentially what you sign them up for. And then we also have the deadlines and dates page available for vet applicants, and we also linked it in the comments below. So this is just going to be kind of like like an informal FAQ live Q&A. So just make sure to send in your questions and enter those into the chat, and we'll be here to address them as long as we need.
Yeah, and just a recap of a few items. I know we recently sent out an email to our veterinary applicants who have not yet submitted an application. If you have not seen that email, check your junk, check your spam inboxes for that. There's a lot of great information, including a link to our veterinary schools panel where they talk about a lot of questions that we're encountering specifically right now when we have about 1,000 veterinary applicants just really trying to get that application in. And so, what we really want to encourage you to do is take advantage of these resources. Read the application handbook. There are specific instructions around sections like the activity section. One key difference is for veterinary applicants, you are able to enter activities from high school. That is very different from our dental, medical, and podiatry applicants. But then there are also other considerations. So really take advantage of all these resources that are being provided to you. And if you at any time you have any questions, any concerns, you know how to get a hold of us here at TMDSAS. You can send us an internal message, or you can attend our office hours so that you can get some additional insights into how to get your application in and get it in as complete and as accurate as possible. Now, I do want to emphasize just giving you all some insider knowledge here with TMDSAS. At this point, we currently have, give me 1 second while I pull up the numbers here. The application, of course, has been open since May 1st of this year, and it'll close on August 30th overnight. The application officially will close at 11:59. And so what we are trying to do right now is get you all insights into how many folks have already submitted their application for veterinary school. So as of today at 1:12, today is August 14th, 2024 at 1:12 p.m., we currently have 201 veterinary school applicants. To give you all an insight into what happens with these applications, it does take us about a 4 week right now. For any applicant, it's taking us about 4 weeks. We're at the peak time of our application processing in the cycle. We are expecting about another 1,000 applicants. Last year we had 1,200 plus applicants to veterinary school. So what ends up happening is for veterinary applicants, very often we see applicants submitting the last day, if not 2 days before the application deadline. And while that is still well within the application deadline, it really is important. I think I can actually use the word behooves you, since we're talking to vet applicants here, that you submit your application as soon as you are ready to do so. And that's really important because there may be some other questions that we might have as part of the processing of your application. And with 1,000 more applicants coming through TMDSAS in the next 2 weeks, the sooner you can get your application in, especially if you have any situations with your residency, or if you are, for example, an academic fresh start applicant, someone who might require additional time to have your application processed, I highly urge you to submit your application this week. Um, So if you basically with part of our application processing, one of the things that we look at is your residency. And for schools, being a Texas resident, of course, just like any other applicant, is very important. We've talked about the reasons why. But when we're looking at your residency, there may be some additional questions, additional documentation that we need from you in order to determine whether you are a Texas resident. So let me kind of run through this really quickly, if you don't mind, Sulema. Basically, there are two options for somebody to be considered a Texas resident, and I can actually walk you all through these along with our website. Let me go ahead and share that page.
Oh, I
This
was
is
already on it.
oh, nice.
Yeah, you can share your screen and
Yeah,
I'll paste the link.
perfect. So yeah, as part of our application guide, we do list out these different reasons. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Perfect. So here is the residency section of the TMDSAS application guide. And so there's a lot of great information here. We also have a session on Texas residency, but I'm going to give you all a crash course here. There are essentially two different pathways to gaining Texas residency. The first option is uh, what would be like the slam dunk that you are a Texas resident. That is, if you have lived in Texas for, I'm sorry, if you graduated from Texas high school or received a GED in Texas, and you lived here for 36 months immediately before graduating from high school or receiving your GED, and you've lived in Texas for the past 12 months preceding the application deadline. That is a slam dunk Texas resident. We are not uh, very likely not going to request additional documentation. This would also include if you ended up going out of state for school. For example, if you went to Texas high school and you meet all these requirements, but you ended up going to OU, or you ended up going to BYU, or any other university out of state. Because you're out of state, it's generally considered an acceptable absence from the state because you're out of Texas for purposes of education. And so, in those situations, very often we will not need additional documentation to confirm your residency. If you do not fit this option, you still could be considered a Texas residency, but you may need to submit additional documentation. And in these situations, I really want to prepare our veterinary applicants to kind of be ready to have this documentation on hand if you do meet Texas residency requirements through option two. This is the one that requires you to have lived in Texas for the past 12 months uh, preceding the application deadline, and also meet one of the requirements where you are either gainfully employed in Texas, where you have sole or joint marital ownership of a residential real property in Texas, if you own and operate a business in Texas with no intent on liquidating it, and I'm sorry, or if you are married to a person who is a Texas resident for the past year. So you'd have to be married for the past year in order to be considered Texas resident. So if you are a Texas resident through one of those, or if you're a Texas resident because your parent meets one of those and you're dependent on that parent, there is additional documentation that we would need to take a look at to confirm your residency. And as you can imagine, and if you take a look at this page a little bit further down, we explain things like gainful employment, what type of documentation we require. For example, if you have gainful employment, we'll take a look at your pay stubs and your driver's license. If you own property in Texas, we'll take a look at your warranty deed, your utilities, and your Texas driver's license to confirm that you live at that address. And so all of these documents take time to um, evaluate. We also probably the longest amount of time that it takes is for the applicant to respond to our request for these documents. So if you are somebody who is a Texas resident through option two, where you have one of those documents, I highly urge you to submit your application very, very soon so that you aren't being caught up within those 1,000 other applicants that are going to take some time in order to process and get out to the veterinary schools. So, crash course, everybody here is now a residency expert. And of course, with every option that I shared with you all, there are additional considerations. The only way that we can ever make final determinations taking a look at your responses to the questions in the TMDSAS application. So that is why this whole processing aspect of your application has to wait until you submit. So
Yeah.
there you go,
Well,
crash course, Sulema.
yeah, and thank you. And I'm glad that you let everyone see what the possible documents would be, because I know we've talked about, make sure you get these documents ready, like on hand, standby in case you need those. And so just giving everyone an idea of where they can see, depending what option they are establishing their Texas residency, what kind of documents they should be obtaining now to make sure that they're ready to go. And then I also went ahead and linked to the website that we have. It's a section in our application guide called After Submitting. So this gives you information as to how to check your messages. So, like Enrique said, we do communicate with you all via message, and this is going to be located in your TMDSAS application portal. If you've never heard of it, this is going to show you exactly where to go find it, how to write your message, what the turnaround time is for that, since we are serving over 9,000 applicants usually every year. We do have a policy that we will get back to you within 2 business days. The reason for that is we do have a lot of people that we need to get back to and respond to in a timely manner, and we want to make sure that we're equitable with everyone. So we will get to your message. We will definitely respond back. And so if you have any questions, just send them in there. The neat thing about the messaging feature is that when you send a message, it is connected to your application. So it allows our team members to quickly take a look at exactly what it is that you need us to take a look at. So very handy. I highly recommend it. And then of course, just making sure that you're paying attention to that inbox, because you will be receiving um, information from us. And so you want to make sure that you respond within a timely manner, like Enrique said. Where it takes the longest is if an applicant is not responding to the messages of, hey, we need to take a look at another document. Hey, can you explain this on the application, etc. And so that just takes time for for us to resolve that, and then eventually be able to send out your application out to the school. So you want to make sure that you can um, create the least amount of possibilities for your application to be delayed on your part. Okay, so don't forget, if you have any questions, this is y'all's time. We'll be here until 2 at the latest. So ask your questions now, or you'll have to wait till next week
Yeah,
on when we go live again. So yeah,
it looks like we have a question from Fatima. I know, Fatima, you are a dental applicant, but you did go ahead and submit your question, so we can go ahead and address that now. Do you want paper, rock, scissors for a response on this one, or you want me to take it?
I can take it.
All right.
Yeah, well, let me read it out loud. I entered a future dental shadowing activity. However, due to an unfortunate circumstance, I was only able to complete some of the hours I originally planned. How could I fix this issue? Submitted in July. Oh, perfect. Yes, I can definitely answer this. So thank you, Fatima, for asking your question with us. When Unfortunately, with the activity section, once you submit, you cannot make any changes to that page. Even if your plans change, which that's fine, the schools totally understand that these are plans. So they would potentially change between the time that you submit your application till the time until you matriculate. So unfortunately, there's not much you can do in this case, because again, you cannot make any changes to your activities. In fact, we do have that listed at the top of the activities page in the guide. Just letting you know, you cannot make changes after submitting. But that's okay. If there is an opportunity for you to interview at the school, you can always take a one-page addendum with you and just let them know, hey, here are the changes that I've had in my activity since I submitted. This is just letting giving you a heads up of things that I've been doing now. And so this is where you can explain that, hey, I initially put this amount of hours, but plans changed. So this is actually how many hours I've done. And that's whenever it's appropriate for you to let them know about that.
Yeah, and I can't think of a single school that would be like, "How dare you not look into a crystal ball and tell us that you anticipated this activity? That's not what's going to happen." This is perfectly acceptable, and it's a common practice. The schools will definitely recognize that this is a planned activities, and as Sulema said, plans change.
Mhm.
Cool. All right, another non-veterinary question here from Matt Messina. This one's specifically addressed to me, so I'm happy to take it, Sulema.
Go ahead.
I sent my MCAT score from AMC to TMDSAS. AMC claims that they sent it instantly. I'm wondering, will my score get to you guys by August 15th? Yeah. So when you release your score from AMC, it takes about 36 hours from the time that you release your score to the time that the schools will actually receive it. So it is pretty quick relative to processing times. But I do want to urge you that if you've already sent in your score and you haven't, it hasn't been received by TMDSAS, it could be one of a few issues. It's very likely that there might be a mismatch either in the test date that you entered in the TMDSAS application. That's probably the most common. We've also seen errors where your AMC ID is not entered correctly or your birth date is incorrect. We use these three data points in order to match your MCAT score to your application. So if any one of those are incorrect, your score would not have matched. So um, if you have any questions on that, please send us an internal message. We can confirm whether we received your scores and they just weren't matched, and we can make any corrections. You can also go into your application and confirm that um, all the information that you've entered is correct. And if there are any further questions, you can always re-release your scores once you've confirmed that all those data points are correct. All right.
And I went ahead and addressed Reagan's question, so I'll just quickly display it for everyone to see. Um, So this question is particularly about the analysis and science ACT section score. I know my overall math and reading scores from my transcript, but cannot access my College Board account. That's okay. So the thing is with analysis and science score is that this is actually a subscore. So it's not going to be a section in your SAT section like math and reading. So if you already have a copy of what that score sheet looks like, we do have in the application guide information as to how you can find the analysis and science subscore. Now, if you do not have any access to College Board at all, or you can't get this information from your undergrad institution or your high school, you've exhausted all those resources. There is a checkbox at the bottom of the page, and it says that you verify that you were unable to obtain your scores
Mhm.
if you don't have your scores. Enrique, if you have anything else to add to that.
Nailed it.
Okay. And the link to that section of the guide is in the chat. So just copy and paste from there and take a look at it. And if you have any further questions, don't hesitate to send us a message.
Yeah. Thank
All right,
you.
now your turn.
All right. Let's see. We got another question from Julian. If in the verification process there's further clarification or documentation requested, does the application get back into the queue again for verification? Great question. So the way that our processing goes is that we have a team of applicant liaisons that will go in and get your application and help you make sure that we have everything that we need in order to get that application out to the schools. If there's additional documentation that's required of you in order to confirm, for example, your residency, we'll request those documents, and you actually will not get pushed back to the back of the queue and having to wait another 4 weeks. We'll take a look at those. Our team, while they do process applications and get those out to the schools as quickly as possible, we're also going back and seeing if there are any updates to requests like documentation. So yeah, you do not get pushed to the back of the queue. In fact, we check on those several times a week in order to make sure that we get those out to the schools as quickly as possible. It's just as important for us to get those applications out to the schools as it is for you all. So we share that sense of urgency with you all. All right. GK, do Texas medical schools, a part of TMDSAS, have to accept biology lab credit under the biology classification, or do the schools have the discretion to accept only a specific type of biology lab credit? I think I can take this one, Sulema. This is very much a what if type of question, and so I'm going to have to answer in the most broad terms. According to the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, any course um, that could fulfill a prerequisite has to be accepted, which is why when we get the question of whether a community college biology course for biology majors is going to count, or we get a question of will this online course count? If the course is being offered and it's being offered in the biology department, and it's specifically not an audited course, not a developmental course, and not a course for non-science majors, it will count. So in this situation, what we do on the TMDSAS end is we say, here are all of the biology courses that could count for this um, prerequisite, and you'll see those on your PCR. We do the same thing for your labs, so those labs are included on there. By and far, the schools will accept whatever recommendations we submit. So if you have multiple biology labs, obviously one of those is going to fulfill the requirement. And we do have a list of requirements, which is why TMDSAS is included as part of the verification process to confirm that specific courses are included on your application under the PCR, meaning that those courses can fulfill a prerequisite. And so, because of that, if there's a course that's including your PCR, that course is very likely going to fulfill that requirement. Uh, with all that said, the schools may reserve the right to inquire for additional coursework. And we'll see that with some schools, like, for example, Baylor College of Medicine has an additional humanities requirement that TMDSAS does not screen for. And so the schools do have the right to add consideration for additional coursework. But by and large, if it's a biology lab and it's associated with, Bio 301 or that first level biology course for science majors, 99% of the time it will count. I can't say 100% of the time because there might be uh, a specific scenario here or there based off of specific sequences, but I'm not going to get into that. In general, it will count. So I may have shared too much info, but there you all are.
Hey, it's coming from the director.
Yeah, I always have to deal with the weird cases, and so I can never say anything that's 100% correct because I always see the most bizarre situations.
hmm
All
All right,
right,
so I do see the next question is for veterinary applicants. So let's
awesome.
definitely display that on the screen. So this is another question from Reagan. So for veterinary applicants, how should we describe our pet ownership experience under the animal experience section?
Yeah.
Um, I could explain it, but I'm curious to see what you have to say.
Oh, we definitely see pet ownership as one of the activities in the animal experience section, and you would just describe, uh, supporting your pet, the nutrition, the development that you provide, any specifics along those lines. Just kind of see it within the lens of your prospective future as a veterinarian, um, and that's certainly an acceptable activity as a health as a I'm sorry, as an animal experiences activity.
Yeah, and I did want to mention that I went ahead and entered the link to the activities page and the guide. So just kind of giving y'all an overall scope of what that page consists of. It's an overall guidance. So this page is accumulation of information obtained from our director, Enrique, the deans from all the schools, medical, dental, podiatry, and what they've had to say about activities, what they want to see, what those descriptions should look like, um, everything you're curious about, whether to what anything, who, what, when, where, why about activities. They mostly already covered it in one of our various videos that we have on our YouTube channel, which you can always go back to and watch. We kind of did the shorthand of that, cliff notes, and attached it into the activities page. So if you're ever curious as to like the guidance, overall guidance, what exactly are they looking for in each section, definitely take a look at that. Additionally, since you are a veterinary applicant and you should have already received an email that went out yesterday, that does have a link to the previous 2 years veterinary school panels. I know it was like 2 years ago, but it's full of information that the admissions deans themselves from those schools are telling the audience, this is what we want to see. This is how that should be look like. This is what pet ownership should look like. This is what this
Yeah.
other experience should look like. And it's coming directly from the. I mean, we always say this pun because it's with veterinary applicants, but directly from the horse's mouth. So I definitely recommend that you take a look at that, and that is linked in the email that went out yesterday.
Yeah, and vet applicants forgive us for our
Boom.
use of puns here, but we don't get that opportunity too often. So
Mhm. All right.
we got follow up from Matt. He's saying that he released his MCAT scores digitally this morning. He wants to make sure they're in TMDSAs by tomorrow. If everything is correct and you release your scores, it should be there by tomorrow. And if it's not, send us an IM and we'll work with you on that. All right, Abby, any recommendations on revising essays? The ones I have are longer than what is allowed, and I'm having trouble making them shorter. Definitely a great question. I highly recommend that you all uh, either reach out to your health professions advisor to have a look at your essay and make recommendations on what you can reduce or maybe even eliminate. um, Another option is, having a friend or a mentor read through your essay and just say, maybe you might want to reword this, or in this paragraph, here's the main takeaway that I have, but you could just say that in one sentence rather than a full paragraph. And sometimes having just another set of eyes is really going to be a helpful aspect of your application. Um, but what I would urge you to do is be very cautious in how many people you're asking to review your essays. You don't want your voice to get lost in it. And also, I know that programs such as ChatGPT or other large language models can help you with reducing the use of I'm sorry, the length of your essay. That's what I meant to say. But I urge you to use those cautiously to make sure that it doesn't completely change your essay. As part of our certification statement, we do make sure that each applicant certifies that the work that they're submitting is 100% their own. And while these tools exist to help you, particularly around the beginning aspects of the writing and the essays, we do urge a lot of caution kind of later in the process of writing and editing, where it doesn't actually completely change the way that you are writing, and it's you presenting information that you have not uh, put together yourself.
Yeah, and to add to that, we did host a admissions dean's corner session with Dr. Kellerway from Long School of Medicine, particularly about the essay portion, writing your essays, personal statement, tips and tricks and insights and everything. She's great. She provided a lot of examples of previous submissions and not the whole essay, but just enough for you to kind of get an idea of what they've seen and what is like best practice. So I highly recommend that you take a look at that if you haven't already. And of course, any of the other admissions deans corner sessions, which are also valuable for the applicants. So while our office hours and application workshops are specifically about filling out the application, the admissions deans corner series provides a whole comprehensive, informational about all these different topics that are coming directly from the deans that are still relevant for you in terms as to holistic review and your overall application and how you can stand out. Because that's what everyone wants to know. How do I stand out as a competitive applicant? Well, there's a lot of topics there that are
Oh yeah.
discussed that are relevant for you all.
Hmm. Well said.
And not just because I worked on those sessions.
All
Okay. And
right.
I'm glad that Reagan loves our puns.
Oh, great. Excellent.
You can chill with us.
Yeah. Okay. Next up, we've got Nicole. If I did a 6-month internship out of state post undergrad. Would that harm my Texas residency, even if I'm back in Texas now working? This, and I'm gonna, again, this is something that I'm gonna have to speak very generally on because there are so many different situations. With what you shared, since that is a temporary absence, that would not necessarily harm your Texas residency alone, but there are other aspects of your application that we would have to look into, which is why these things take time to review and additional documentation is requested. So I can't say for certain that in your situation, Nicole, that you are still a Texas resident or you are no longer a Texas resident. But we will determine that as part of the processing of your application. And if there's any request for documentation, again, we're very likely going to be looking at um, the nature of your employment. Did you establish residency in a different state? While you were working there, did you work 40 hours a week? And change your ID to be from a different state and really, file taxes and live there, and you married someone from a different state and you did all these other steps, you may have lost Texas residency, because you can't be a resident of two different states at the same time. So, again, we would have to take a look at the specific situation on in your case, and make a determination for which documentation would be required to show that you're still a Texas resident. So
Yeah, and the
sorry I
best
can't give a solid
approach
response there, but
Yeah, and the best approach that we give everyone is just to take a look at the residency page in the guide, which we do have in the chat. So just refer to that. Take a look at the the different options like Enrique had explained earlier in the session. So if you joined us and missed that part, you can always go back and rewatch it after the conclusion of this session.
mhm,
And so basically, just take a look at that, see what kind of option is for you. Make sure that you're also filling out that section of the application as accurately as possible to the best of your knowledge. The determination at the bottom of that page will give you an initial determination based on your questions that you answered. So if that says that you've been determined to be non-Texas resident, don't panic, because that is just what the system is reviewing based on what you answered.
mhm,
It still needs to be reviewed by humans. So then at that point, once you submit your application and in the processing stage is whenever our liaisons will go in there and review every application. It's a case by case situation. And so they'll be able to maybe see, actually, maybe know you are a Texas resident after reviewing the documentation you provided.
mhm.
So just be mindful of that as well. Don't be alarmed by that first initial determination.
Yeah, and that's why with residency we have so many steps along the way. We want to make sure it's accurate, but we also want to make sure that we are getting information directly from you as the applicant. Cool, cool. All right, Reagan. How do we bring in puns into this, Ulema? Uh, where would we list speaking engagements or presentations in our personal biography? I currently have mine listed under extracurriculars. How would you recommend we describe them? Um, the clearest way, I think, if you're doing a speaking engagement or presentation, um, if it was a result of research, there's a specific question within the research activities section that asks if it resulted in a presentation or a publication. So if these were actually research activities, that section would give you the opportunity to expand on it. But if these speaking engagements and presentations maybe are a little bit more aligned with extracurriculars as you've listed, I think it's perfectly acceptable to list them there. Another option might even be, if these are academically related but they're not research, you might include it under academic recognition and just include, I was a speaker at this conference, or I presented a white paper at this conference, or I presented at this session or whatever. Um, so really, at the end of the day, this is one of those questions where it could be pulling hairs. Um, I don't have a veterinary pun for that, but essentially, it's up to you, and it's not something that's going to be a make or break. So just figure out which section you think it it, fits into best, and just move along in the application.
Yeah, and the feedback that we got from deans, I remember is- this one particular session that I had with the dental dean. So I know this is specifically for vet, but even the guidance and wisdom from all our deans is super valuable, no matter what applicant type you are. But the deans, the overall consensus is, they trust you, and whatever you decide is what goes into each category. They're not nitpicky about, oh, this activity actually should have gone here. We're going to mark that off. They don't do that. If you say this goes here, it goes here. That's what they are taking your word for, and you're going to explain that in your description, saying, based on the questions that we pasted here into the chat, the deans say that it's best for you to reflect on your activity so you can make the determination as to where it should fit best based on the guidance that is provided by Team DSAS in the application guide.
Mm-hmm.
So, one is, so if it's an activity, and after hearing Enrique's explanation about that research part, and you're like, well, that doesn't really apply to this activity, ask yourself, what did I learn? What was valuable about this activity? And what was a meaningful connection, personal connection that you had to this activity, and why? So, lessons learned, anything that was valuable, that stuck out to you, that made an impression on you, and in your healthcare journey, that is where you have to do in your part of the work and reflecting as to why this activity is important. It's obviously important because you're wanting to put it into your application, but now it's just um, really thinking about the activity and thinking, okay, what do I want to tell the schools about this particular activity? And that should guide where you place it. Not, I think it should go here because there's an example, and even though I did something else in that activity, it I have to put it here, or I think this is where the schools want it. You have to make that determination and
Mm-hmm.
trust your gut.
Nailed it.
And again, all this is because of all the practice from hearing this from the deans, and I specifically ask them strategic questions that I know that our applicants always ask us, like activities. Will they toss out my application? No, they do not. I've confirmed and I've asked all deans on air afterwards. They do not toss out applications, so that is not a thing. I know that that's a rumor, and we've seen it on Reddit, in Reddit threads, but that is not true. At least not for the Texas schools. They do not toss out your application. They review every application just like the next one. And so please, please, please don't think that that's what they do. They're not out here to catch you on the smallest simple mistake. They're not out here to get you. They are reviewing everything holistically, like they say that they are.
Yes. And I think that's really important is there's never going to be a single factor that's going to make your application get rejected. Um, so if you're looking at a bad GPA, or if you're looking at a bad test score, or if you put a healthcare activity under employment and forgot to cross list it as a healthcare activity, those things are not going to trip you up in your application. What the schools are looking for holistically is overall trends, overall um, experiences, and how those connect to your journey. And based off of that, um, that's how they make a determination who gets an interview invite. That's how they'll determine who is going to move forward in the process. And that's how they determine maybe this person is not ready for professional school, or um, we're not going to move forward with this candidate because of reasons X, Y, and Z. And that's one of the reasons why it's so helpful after the cycle ends, to maybe even reach out to the schools if you do have a rejection, to maybe request a file review and get some additional feedback. But what I can tell you is, each applicant, you all, I know 100% know which areas you could develop further in. There's never going to be a perfect application. Even the person that has a perfect test score, the perfect GPA, maybe not doesn't have all of those experiences. Even the person that has all those excellent experiences in the GPA maybe doesn't have the maturity level. Maybe the people that have all of those covered maybe isn't the best in one-on-one settings with people and doesn't do well on an interview. There are so many different aspects that our schools are taking into consideration. That's why holistic review is so important for us to understand. Is that it doesn't mean that a specific aspect of your application is going to be better or worse. It just means that that's going to be taken into consideration with your overall application. And so, of course, do the best that you can. Do the best in performing in your courses to have a competitive GPA that really shows that you're ready for professional school. Do the best you can to prepare for your future patients, whether they be human or non-human. But really, at the end of the day, your application, the reason why it's so important for you to put your best foot forward and present yourself in the best light and really address areas that you feel are important for you to address is because at the end of the day, we're seeing 10,000 other people who have had a bad semester. We're seeing 10,000 other people who open up an essay using the same, introduction that we see on Reddit. There are 10,000 other people that have personal history with why they want to pursue a specific career. And at the end of the day, we're looking for people who stand out because they have taken the time to assess their application, have taken the time to really think through and act on why they're going to be the best healthcare provider. And at the end of the day, that's really what we're trying to do here. I'd love to wave a magic wand and accept everybody, but at the end of the day, we're not just looking to get people into the next step. We're also looking for people to go out and provide health services and help the health of Texas, and that's what we're trying to accomplish here. So when we're looking at an aspect like that, uh, thinking about is this activity in the right section suddenly becomes very menial, and so that's why I share this whole tangent with you all. Um, at the end of the day, do the best that you can in your application, get it in, and move on to the next thing because this is just another step in your overall journey and your overall process. And we look forward to having you realize your self actualization and getting out there to help the patients of Texas because we all need so much help here.
Yes, I love how you said that because I know that from a student's perspective, sometimes I was also a student. We both were, and so there were those times whenever you were just very like anxious, stressed out, you're doubtful perhaps, maybe you were just worried about fixating on one thing that you realized was, maybe you made a mistake in your essay, maybe you used the wrong punctuation at the end and you're like, "Oh, snap, that's going to stand out. It's at the very end of the paragraph." That's what they're going to be left with, and then they're just not going to look at anything else because they're just going to see that I have no attention to detail. And so just understanding that there is, taking a step back and just looking at the big picture and realizing, wow, like there's just so many more aspects of me, more than just if am I a writer? Like there's just more to you. And so just fixating on those little details like that is not gonna be the best for your mental health, but also it's just like there's just so much more, and it's not gonna be the end of the world. And so if you still don't really fully understand what holistic review is, um, we did have another session with the dean, and it is linked in the chat. So we had Dr. Banks from UTMB explain what holistic review is, and it's very similar across all of the other school types. Um, Also using a holistic review. And so that session goes a little bit more in depth as to what that looks like. And in that session, we did ask a question along the lines of, what is that one key factor that's going to make someone stand out and be accepted? And the answer was just like Enrique had mentioned, there's not one thing. There's everything that's considered in the application. And so that is reiterated in the session. So if you're curious about that, take a look at it. I highly recommend it.
Cool. I think I scared everybody away because I haven't seen any new questions pop up. Sulema,
Or you just maybe addressed everything.
who knows? Who knows? And if we did, we're really looking forward. Again, we're still expecting about 1,000 veterinary applications, so make sure you get yours in as quickly as possible. Get your evaluators in line because that August 30th deadline is just a couple of weeks away, and so you want to make sure that you get your application in on time, that you are focused on all aspects of your application. That'll include your Casper score for those veterinary schools. your evaluations, your secondary applications, get everything in by the deadline in order to be considered.
And so one last thing, just because I see this comment and just made me laugh.
um,
Oh, I
Reagan,
love this.
yes.
Like, Reagan, thank you. You like made my day
Yeah,
here.
that's made my day. Perfect. Awesome.
All
Well,
right,
Selena,
next
thank you so much
yeah.
for having me, and best of luck to everybody. We're looking forward to your applications, and if there's anything we can do to help you, reach out to us via the internal messaging system, and we're happy to address your questions.
Yeah, and if you would like to have this, be part of this live Q&A again and have your questions answered through here, we will be here next week, same time, same date, and then the following. So we'll be here August 21st, the 28th, same time. This it's going to be specifically for vet applicants because we want to make sure that we provide that platform for you all. But if you are, another applicant type, you can still join us.
Oh yeah.
We're not going to say no. We'll still address your questions as you saw earlier, but we definitely want to make sure that vet applicants, are aware of this so they can hop on and ask your questions.
Hmm.
Alrighty, guys. So we'll go ahead and say goodbye.
Thank you. Bye bye.